Mapping and charting to guide the pilot and sailor. Forecasting the weather. Protecting marine resources. Collecting data from sea and space. Viewing the Earth from satellites. Managing our fisheries. Studying the oceans and the atmosphere. This is NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. On land, at sea, and in the air, NOAA's activities are supported with the special skills of the officers of America's smallest uniformed service, the NOAA Corps.
I'm Jim Hartz, and I want to introduce you to the men and women of the NOAA Corps. Thomas Jefferson, when he was president, realized that America's domestic and foreign trade could thrive only with good transportation. It was to improve the safety and reliability of shipping that Jefferson obtained the approval in 1807 from the Congress to begin a coastal survey. The group doing this work was the ancestor of today's NOAA Corps.
From a survey of the coast, the work has expanded. Today, NOAA's officer scientists serve in every environmental discipline, including oceanography, meteorology, biology, and physics. The NOAA Corps consists entirely of officers. New members of this corps are carefully selected and then enrolled in NOAA's officer training program.
This is the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, Long Island. Each year, about 40 NOAA Corps recruits receive the training they need to perform as officers aboard NOAA vessels.
The course you steer will be course 269.
At the Academy, NOAA conducts its own training for the recruits. Most of them have at least a bachelor's degree in engineering, math, or science.
Stepping stone.
The training assumes no previous experience with ships.
Kings Point stack.
I knew nothing about the ocean before I came to work for NOAA.
105.
I had a geology degree and heard about NOAA through a recruiter at the university where I was getting my master's degree.
Navigation and ship handling are the focus of the program.
Have you determined the true course and speed yet of any of those targets?
Well, move's relative. Our course is speed, which means it's probably dead in the water.
Correct.
Training for NOAA officers isn't just theoretical. They get thorough training in the handling of boats, beginning at the most elementary level with hands-on experience and working their way up to handling the King's Pointer, a full-size training vessel.
Attention on deck. This is the CL. I have the deck and the con. Make that entry in the logbook, please. Mr. Grunewald.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how to get aboard?
Yes, sir.
Do me a favor. Don't fall in the water.
Yes, sir. Slack one!
NOAA officers need more hands-on skill than their Navy counterparts. There are no enlisted personnel in NOAA, and officers often work alongside civilian crew members to accomplish the research mission. This may involve handling lines, driving boats, or operating sophisticated electronic gear.
Yes, sir.
You'll be taking over here in about 40 seconds. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
You are? Take a big, deep breath, okay? You know what course you're going to be coming to?
270.
Go ahead, ma'am. It's all yours.
A lot of us didn't have the type of discipline that this really is necessary when you're aboard ship.
Rudder is amidship.
And so he imposes that on you.
Right, 50%.
In the training program, we try to emphasize the importance of the responsibility that a new recruit has.
Still have too much rudder on.
Because when they take a boat out or when they're in charge of a bridge watch, they're responsible for the lives of all of the people on the ship.
Sometime today, Mr.
If it's something that has to be done in a hurry, you may be yelled at because it's an emergency.
5 degrees rudder.
They had an awful lot to teach us to try and make us into sailors.
Very well.
Approximately 9 minutes, which would be time 10:15.
10:15.
Is that right?
You want to bet your car against my motorcycle?
No, sir.
0.69. You see that red buoy over there?
Yes, sir.
That's the outer limits of the other part of the channel. What's happening?
We're going in towards the channel. We should be turning.
Because if you go past the channel, what happens?
We're in the other person's channel. The other.
We're aground.
We're aground?
Yes. Sheer panic.
New time is 10:13.
If you're in an emergency situation, you have to be able to give an order and it has to be obeyed, and it has to be done now, or else some people can get hurt.
That tank is bearing 3.
This is a sextant. Now, you've seen these in the classroom, but you've never...
Even though NOAA vessels are equipped with modern electronic navigation instruments, NOAA officers also learn to use traditional instruments as they master fundamental navigation and charting principles.
In the water, using these horizontal angles between two objects.
When the recruits are commissioned as ensigns, they all go to sea assignments. Some will be on NOAA's largest ships that carry more than 100 people on deep ocean research missions around the world. Others will join crews of fisheries ships or coastal survey vessels. A typical sea tour is 2 years. Officers from the survey ship sometimes form a shore party to set up and maintain radio transponders that permit the ship to calculate its exact location.
Roger, KS 45, I'm here at Sonora, over.
This shore station on the Pacific coast of Washington serves the NOAA survey ship Davidson.
Point the antenna around to the right. Roger, 30 degrees to the right, over.
The activity on board the Davidson is typical of NOAA Corps officers' life and work during a sea tour.
All right, let's run survey.
Officers are responsible for the data collection activity.
Looks like we're starting to get some gaps here. We better decrease our turns to 280 meters on the chart from an actual value. Is that correct?
About a 19% slope rather than a flat.
A lot of times survey operations are very routine, and another word for that's monotonous. But I think that it's the responsibility of the first 4 officers to make sure that the junior officers, they have plenty to do to keep them busy and therefore keep their morale up.
What about the 150-meter contour?
Officers supervise survey technicians and other civilian employees who operate the ship and provide essential services.
We got the 150 meters on this seat.
Even though you are in a uniform, you do not use military management styles.
Standing 4-hour watches on the bridge, officers look out for the ship's safety round the clock. In coastal waters where most NOAA ships work, traffic can be very heavy.
Roger, Captain. This is Davidson. What is your present course and speed, over?
When bad weather limits visibility, routine ship-to-ship radio communication becomes especially important.
Roger that, Captain. I'm going to back them down here and let you go in front of me. Go ahead and get the traffic separations on there. Over.
The officer's life at sea involves a predictable routine of duties, but the weather is an unavoidably changeable feature.
You're going to get kicked, and if you don't think you're going to get kicked when you go out there, you're a fool.
We had 15-foot seas and 35 to 40-knot winds. It was just a miserable time.
The most important thing for good morale is that the people are, in fact, interested in what they are doing.
Everyone has their own job. And you know that you're going to be all together working for a while, and then you're going to go into port, and you'll probably be socializing together, and it's a very comfortable atmosphere.
That's what he said he was.
You don't have to commute to work. You don't have to go to the supermarket. All your meals are ready for you. The relationships you develop on a ship are very different than you develop if you're working in an office and you go home at the end of the day. On a ship, it's very much like living in a small family. You see each other in all different aspects. When you're angry, when you're dirty, when you're clean, when you're at your worst.
Just give me a cup of your house.
No.
The rhythm of 4 hours on duty, 8 hours off, 4 hours on, leaves a lot of free time. Officers find that they get a lot of reading done at sea. During their service, many officers earn advanced degrees, and the Corps encourages and supports these efforts.
Left hand.
While NOAA's larger ships can go to sea for weeks at a time, coastal survey vessels make port calls every 10 days or 2 weeks.
Starboard ahead 2. Starboard ahead 2. Left 10 degrees rudder.
Left 10.
I'll stop.
I'll stop.
Coming toward the left.
This is NOAA's Pacific Marine Center in Seattle.
The Marine Centers here and in Norfolk, Virginia provide home ports for the NOAA fleet and home bases for the officers who serve aboard these NOAA ships. Between sea tours, officers may be assigned shore duty at the Marine Centers. But many officers' shore duty is within NOAA's much more extensive civilian operations.
This is NOAA's Western Regional Center on Lake Washington in Seattle. When you think that NOAA's sphere of concerns includes the oceans and the atmosphere, you get some idea of the range of work that goes on inside the labs and offices of these buildings.
NOAA Corps officers on shore duty are working in several of NOAA's civilian divisions in this complex. When you talk to them, it's clear that the variety of experiences that officers have when they're at sea become an asset to the civilian organizations that they serve ashore. This officer's experience at sea is essential background in her work with civilian participants in NOAA's Marine Mammal Survey.
We sailed about half of our time up in the Bering Sea.
This is a piece of baleen that comes out of a baleen
And we did work with whales. We looked for marine mammals. We did marine mammal surveys.
It comes down from the top jaw, and so it's situated like this, so there'll be a series of baleen in this whale.
We're able to look at the big picture. Different organizations are making the trips with us on the ships.
Marine Entanglement, Lieutenant Commander Bunn.
And then we have the opportunity to come back and work with a variety of those organizations in the labs.
Sure, yeah, I'd like to take a look at it.
Plastic debris and fragments of fish nets endanger marine life. This officer is working with industry and community groups to solve the problem. He can draw on several years of experience in marine fisheries research.
And most of our work was done in the Bering Sea. Just trying to find out exactly what the numbers of the various populations were, both in fish stocks themselves as well as a study or two on marine mammals.
48 pounds of box crabs.
Lieutenant Davidson, this is Commander Westcott with NOAA Hazmat. I understand you have an update on the Pearl Harbor spill?
NOAA officers staff a technical support center for the teams that clean up hazardous materials that spill into the marine environment. Their experience at sea is invaluable.
Who they work with out in the field are the Coast Guard strike teams, which are the environmental cleanup teams. They work with the EPA. They'll work with local governments. They work with all the environmental groups in the area, Audubon societies and oceanographic societies. You know, it's just a lot of contact with a lot of people.
As soon as we possibly can. Anything else we can do right now?
No, you've been a great help.
Updated marine forecast for the western Washington inland waters. For the Strait of Juan de Fuca, updated.
When a lieutenant with sea duty under his belt issues a marine weather forecast, he knows the real-world significance of his work. In a typical NOAA Corps career, the officers spend about 2/3 of their time on shore duty and 1/3 on sea assignments. Sea duty is not only along wind-blown sea coasts or in uncharted bays. NOAA ships are mobile research platforms. Some of them are used to study the marine environment in busy harbors, and they make port calls in the biggest cities. Most of NOAA's research platforms float, but some of them fly.
1 o'clock eastbound.
NOAA research planes gather atmospheric data, support weather studies, and track hurricanes. Using planes equipped for aerial photography, NOAA officers fly photogrammetric missions that bring back pictures used to prepare aeronautical and nautical charts. Aeronautical chart makers have to keep up with new construction near airport approaches. In the same way, man-made changes along shorelines and within harbors make it necessary to revise nautical charts. The forces of nature continue to move shorelines, so the original task of coastal charting is never ending.
The tip of the Washington Monument is a Geodetic Survey point, one of hundreds across the country that anchor all the other land surveys, charts, and maps. Satellite observations have defined the location of these points with much greater accuracy. Here in the Washington area, we find many of the assignments for NOAA Corps officers when they serve ashore.
NOAA's Satellite Control Center is just outside Washington. NOAA's satellites track weather systems and conduct atmospheric research. And NOAA represents the United States in the International Search and Rescue Satellite System. A NOAA commander is beginning a new shore assignment here.
Now what we have here is the Goes West controller.
After an introductory tour of duties to get acquainted, he'll put his engineering background and his graduate business degree to work analyzing NOAA's contracts with the private sector firms that support the satellite operations. Years of sea duty and rising through the officer ranks qualify Corps members for ever higher levels of responsibility during their periods of service in NOAA's civilian operations.
Could we see what the old airspace structure looked like last cycle?
This captain is responsible for publishing aeronautical charts and for planning future products to take advantage of evolving technology. Air route changes require compiling and printing 1,000 new charts every 56 days, and the officer is coordinating a research effort to develop a more timely and efficient system.
For some time since the early 60s, we've been providing air traffic control facilities with digital data for use in their mainframe computers at the centers. There's one of the changes right there, the difference between the... But now as technology has evolved into inexpensive systems that are aboard aircraft, it becomes more and more important that a common database be used.
So what we got here, Dan? Salt Lake City, RVM?
I believe that what we're doing here in terms of making charts will be readily expandable into a common digital database that will be used by both the ground system and the pilots in the aircraft.
It is sea duty, the readiness to go where the work is, plus the combination of scientific background and ship handling skills that set a NOAA Corps career apart.
But even during a tour of sea duty, the officer's ship may spend a considerable amount of time in port. During the ship's time in port, the officers remain on duty and stand regular watches. Seasoned officers may supervise repair work. Newer officers have a chance to get acquainted with a variety of duties. One of these is making a regular inspection of the entire ship. It's important to the ship's safety, and it provides an opportunity for the new officer to become thoroughly familiar with the ship's layout and equipment. While the ship is in its home port, its officers report to the ship for duty, but they're free to go home when off duty. This officer is about to begin the second voyage of his first sea assignment. He'll have several special responsibilities while at sea. As safety officer, he will draw on his background in industrial engineering. He'll also serve as meteorology officer and diving officer.
The NOAA fleet is like no other. Every ship is designed and equipped for research and surveying. As we speak, the officers of the NOAA ship Oceanographer are preparing for a long Pacific voyage to collect data on the relationship between climate systems in the oceans.
As the departure time draws near, last-minute preparations accelerate. Scientific instruments are loaded, and the civilian scientists come on board.
Following our fueling stop tomorrow, we'll be transiting out of the Strait of Juan de Fuca with approximately a
Before sailing, the field operations officer and the chief scientist review the planned course and the scheduled scientific operations.
What do we expect to do there if any repairs were necessary?
Well, the equatorial mooring is the same as one at 2 north in that it was just put in, so I expect it'll be all right. At 2 degrees south, though, that mooring's been in for 6 months. And we know that the sea surface temperature sensor on that's been damaged, so we would like to put a small boat in and go over with the spare sensor, repair that.
With each return to sea duty, officers at all levels are called upon to refine old skills and develop new ones as they experience once again the challenges and rewards of life at sea.
When we depart, we transit out through the canal, right through the Chittenden locks. We have just very few feet on either side of us, and then we have some turns to make. So this type of ship handling through the channel is very challenging for anyone, even a ship handler that's been in for years. And we do give the ensigns that responsibility after we ensure that they've demonstrated to the satisfaction of the commanding officer that they can handle the ship.
What's your head? Come right to 303.
One of the commanding officer's most important duties is developing the capabilities of the younger officers.
Every chance I get in a situation like this, when we've got fairly reasonable conditions, I let them have the con and let them maneuver the ship in confined spaces. She did a good job that if she gets herself into a bad situation, she'll turn to me and ask for advice. And I've got to be looking to make sure that I know exactly what to do if the call does come for me. I've got to be ready to relieve at any time and take the ship out and keep it safe and sound.
I do have a love for the oceans, and to be able to be studying and finding out what we have done over the centuries to the oceans, to be a part of that, to know that our organization is very much engrossed in that type of work is very rewarding.
If they're interested in doing a lot of different things, if they're interested in going to sea and being out in the field and seeing how oceanography works, or how the weather service works, or how fisheries works, and getting involved in a variety, then this is a great job.
We'd look for somebody who is adventurous, somebody who can be away from home, away from friends and loved ones, and keep their mind on their work.
I don't think the kind of work we're doing now will ever get unimportant.
When I was a little girl, at one point I thought it would be nice to be an astronaut. But I think being a commanding officer of a ship would be just as challenging.
Opportunities with NOAA have all been challenging. I find myself growing, and that's the important part.
And it's fun to get up in the morning.